Imagine you're falling into a black hole right now. Not metaphorically, literally. You'd expect crushing gravity, darkness, the end. But here's the weird part. You'd feel nothing. You'd cross the point of no return, the event horizon, and you wouldn't even notice. You'd just keep falling, looking around, thinking, when does the scary part start? Meanwhile, everyone watching you from outside would see you freeze, redden, and fade away forever. Same event. Two totally incompatible truths. Both correct. This isn't a thought experiment. This is how your life actually works, and you've been living inside the paradox the whole time without realizing it. Look, I need to tell you something right now, right at the start. You don't understand black holes, and it's not your fault. It's not because you're not smart enough or because you didn't pay attention in school. You don't understand black holes because everyone, and I mean everyone, has been showing you the wrong picture from the beginning. They show you this dark circle in space, this cosmic drain, and they tell you it sucks everything in and nothing escapes. And that picture, it's not wrong exactly, it's just incomplete. It's like showing someone a photograph of a wave and thinking they understand the ocean. But here's why this matters. Here's why I need you to stick with me for the next little while. Black holes aren't just some exotic phenomenon happening billions of light years away. They're not just trivia for space nerds. Black holes are mirrors. They show us the limits of our thinking, the places where our comfortable assumptions break down. And once you really understand how a black hole works, not just memorize facts about them, but actually get what's happening, you'll start seeing the same pattern everywhere in your life. In grief, in change, in those moments when you think you've lost something forever. The pain you're carrying right now, that thing you think is just gone, just destroyed, just beyond recovery. It's following the exact same rules as matter falling into a black hole. And when you understand those rules, when you really see how information behaves at the edge of possibility, you're going to feel something shift. Not because I'm going to give you some cheap comfort or tell you everything's fine, but because you're going to see that the universe itself, at its most fundamental level, doesn't let anything truly disappear. It transforms things. It encodes them. It changes their form so radically you don't recognize them anymore. But it doesn't erase them. That's what this is really about. Permission to hold two impossible truths at once and call that wisdom instead of failure. Permission to be both the person falling and the person watching yourself fall. Permission to stop trying to solve the paradox of your own life and start living inside it instead. So let me start with something that's going to sound strange. Black holes don't actually exist. Not in the way you think they do. Now hold on, don't click away thinking I've lost my mind. They're real. The math is real. The observations are real. But the picture you have in your head, that's where we need to start unpacking things. When you imagine a black hole, what do you see? Probably something like a dark sphere hanging in space, right? Maybe with stuff swirling around it, being pulled in. It's there. It's a thing. It's an object. But here's what nobody tells you. From the perspective of someone watching from far away, from outside, nothing has ever actually finished falling into a black hole. Not one single atom since the universe began. Let me say that again because it's important. Every black hole you've ever heard about, the supermassive ones at the centers of galaxies, the stellar mass ones left behind when stars die, all of them are frozen mid-meal. From our perspective, from the outside, time slows down so dramatically near the event horizon that the stuff falling in never quite makes it. It gets stuck in an eternal almost, getting slower and slower and redder, approaching but never crossing. This isn't science fiction. This comes straight from Einstein's equations. Time isn't this universal thing ticking along the same for everyone. It's relative. It depends on gravity. And near a black hole, the gravity is so intense that time itself warps. Someone falling toward a black hole and someone watching them fall will disagree, radically, fundamentally disagree about what's happening. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's weird, but what does that have to do with me? Here's what. You've got your own event horizons, moments in your past that, from your current perspective, look frozen, the person you were at your lowest point, the day everything changed, the moment you think you lost yourself. From where you're standing now, looking back, that moment seems eternal, seems fixed, seems like the defining thing. You see yourself frozen there forever. But here's the thing, you crossed it. From the inside, from the perspective of the you who was living through it, you just kept going. There was no wall, no sign that said point of no return. You were just living, one second after another, and then you were on the other side. The event horizon exists, but only as a relationship between two perspectives, the you looking back and the you moving forward. Both are true. You're allowed to honor both. This is the first thing black holes teach us. Reality doesn't pick sides between observers. The mathematics works out perfectly for both perspectives, contradictory as they seem. You don't have to choose between I'm still stuck in that moment and I've moved on. You're both, simultaneously. Let me tell you about something that happened in the 1940s. See, the first time physicists started taking black holes seriously, back then they called them frozen stars, which I think is beautiful. They ran into this problem. The equations showed that from the outside, the collapse of a star into a black hole would never complete. The star would just get dimmer and dimmer, redder and redder, frozen in time. But from the perspective of someone on the surface of the collapsing star, everything would happen normally. They'd collapse right through, wouldn't feel anything strange at all at the moment of crossing the horizon. Now this drove some physicists absolutely crazy. They couldn't accept that reality could work this way. They kept trying to find the flaw in the math, the trick, the thing they were missing. Because how can both be true? How can the collapse both happen and not happen? But the math didn't care about their discomfort. The equations kept saying the same thing. Both perspectives are valid. Both observers are describing the same event, and both descriptions are correct within their own frame of reference. The universe doesn't resolve the paradox for you, it asks you to hold it. I want you to feel the weight of that for a second. These were brilliant people, people who'd spent their whole lives studying the universe, and they couldn't accept that reality might contain true, unresolvable paradoxes. They needed it to make sense, to collapse into one coherent story. Sound familiar? How much of your suffering right now comes from trying to make your story make sense, trying to be either the person who got hurt or the person who's healed, either traumatized or fine, either stuck or free? What if you're both? What if you're frozen in someone else's memory, in your own memory, while simultaneously moving forward through time? What if that's not a contradiction you need to solve, but a truth you need to accept? There was this physicist, I won't name him because it doesn't matter, but he spent years trying to prove that black holes were impossible. He'd write these long papers showing why the event horizon couldn't exist, why the paradox meant the whole idea was flawed. And you know what? His math was good. Really good. He found genuine puzzles, real problems. But he was asking the wrong question. He was asking, how do I make this make sense? When the right question was, what is reality trying to teach me about sense-making itself? Black holes break your intuition on purpose. They're showing you the limits of common sense, the edge where your everyday experience stops being a reliable guide. And that's not a flaw. That's information. That's nature saying, your map is smaller than the territory. There's more going on than your current way of thinking can hold. The same is true in your life. The things that don't make sense, the fact that you can be happy and still grieving, that you can be healing and still hurt, that you can have moved on and still carry the weight, those aren't signs you're broken. They're signs you're complex. They're signs you're real. Now let me shift gears for a second and talk about something that might seem unrelated, but I promise it's not. Imagine a library, a vast library containing every book ever written, every story, every piece of knowledge, every equation, every poem. Now imagine someone starts burning it. They throw book after book into a fire. The pages curl and blacken. The words turn to smoke. The information seems lost, gone, destroyed. You watch this and you feel despair because how can you get that back? How can you unburn a book? The smoke drifts away into the atmosphere. The heat dissipates. The ashes scatter. It's over, right? But then someone really paying attention, notices something. The smoke has patterns. The way it rises, the turbulence, the specific mix of molecules. It's not random. In principle, if you were unimaginably precise, if you could track every particle, you could work backwards. You could reconstruct what burned. Not easily, not practically. But the information isn't gone. It's transformed, scrambled, encoded in the motion and chemistry of everything the fire touched. This is the black hole information paradox, and it nearly broke physics. When Stephen Hawking showed that black holes could evaporate, that they leak radiation and eventually disappear, everyone panicked. Because if a black hole evaporates, what happens to all the information that fell in? All the books in the library? Does it just vanish? Does the universe have a delete button after all? The debate raged for decades. Hawking himself thought the information was destroyed, that black holes were the one exception to the rule that information is conserved. Other physicists said, no, that violates everything we know. There must be a way the information gets out. It became personal. People built careers on one side or the other, and you know what finally emerged? A weird, beautiful answer. The information gets encoded on the surface of the black hole, on the event horizon itself. Everything that falls in leaves an imprint, a scrambled, unreadable to us pattern written on the boundary. And when the black hole evaporates through Hawking radiation, that information slowly, painfully slowly, over timescales longer than the current age of the universe for big black holes, gets released back into the cosmos. Transformed beyond recognition but not destroyed. Let me bring this back to you, to grief, to loss, to that thing you're carrying that feels like total erasure. The person you lost, whether to death or distance or change, they're not in the place they were anymore. That's true. You can't go back to the library and find that book on the shelf. But their influence, their information, the way they shaped you and the world around you, that didn't vanish. It got encoded. It spread out. It's in your habits, your values, the way you react to things. It's in the lives they touched, the changes they made, the ripples they created. You can't reconstruct them. You can't reverse the process. But you can learn to read what's written on the surface of your life now. You can learn to see the patterns, the encoded information, the ways they're still present in transformed form. The paradox isn't that they're gone. The paradox is that they're everywhere now, and you haven't learned to see that way yet. You're still looking for the book on the shelf. But the information has already spread into everything the fire touched, including you, especially you. And here's the other piece. The thing about Hawking radiation, about the way black holes evaporate. It takes time. Unimaginable amounts of time for the big ones. There's no quick fix, no sudden release. Just this patient, quantum process of transformation happening at the boundary between what was and what is. You're healing, real healing, not the Instagram version. It works the same way. Particle by particle, moment by moment. You don't get to speed it up. You don't get to force it. But it's happening. The black hole of your trauma, your loss, your pain, it's evaporating. Slowly. At exactly the rate the universe designed. And fighting that rate just makes you suffer more. I see people all the time trying to rush their healing, trying to power through, trying to just be okay already. And I understand that. I do. The pain is intolerable. You want it gone. But you can't hurry Hawking radiation. You can't make a black hole evaporate faster by wishing it so. And you can't heal faster than your nervous system, your psyche, your encoded information can process. What you can do is trust the math. Trust that the process is happening even when you can't see it. Trust that information is being released, transformed, reintegrated. Trust that you're becoming something new without having to completely abandon what was. Now I want to talk about time, because this is where things get really strange and really useful. You think time is this thing flowing along, same for everyone. Tick-tock, seconds passing, everyone aging at the same rate. But that's not how it works. Time is a dimension, like space, and gravity bends it. Near a black hole, time doesn't slow down exactly. That's the way we usually say it, but it's not quite right. What happens is your path through time, your trajectory through the dimension of time, gets bent, warped. All your possible futures start pointing in the same direction, inward, toward the singularity. From far away, you see someone approaching the event horizon, and they appear to slow down. But they're not experiencing slow motion. They're experiencing their path through time being curved so drastically that from your perspective, which is along a different path, they seem frozen. Time itself has different shapes in different places. Now think about depression. Think about anxiety. Think about those periods of your life where every tomorrow looks the same, where you can't imagine a future different from today, where all roads seem to lead to the same dark place. You're not broken. Your brain isn't lying to you. What you're experiencing is your sense of possible futures collapsing inward. It's like being near a black hole in emotional space-time. All paths point to the same outcome in your imagination. And because you can't see a different trajectory, you feel stuck, frozen, like time itself has stopped. But here's the thing about event horizons, about these boundaries where futures collapse. They're relative. They depend on your position, your velocity, your frame of reference. What looks like a point of no return from one angle is just another moment from another angle. You can't escape a black hole by fighting the pull. You can't reverse the curvature of space-time by force of will. What you have to do, is change your trajectory. Find one future, just one, that looks different. One path through time that doesn't lead to the same place. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just different. Because once you have one path that diverges, once you can see that not all futures are identical, the event horizon starts to shift. Your sense of possibility expands. Time starts to have shape again instead of being this flat, terrible sameness. I'm not being metaphorical here. I'm telling you that your subjective experience of time, the way tomorrow feels, the sense of possibility or impossibility, it follows rules. It has structure, and that structure can change based on your reference frame, your perspective, your trajectory. When therapists talk about cognitive reframing, when they talk about finding new narratives, what they're really doing is helping you find a different path through time, a different trajectory through your possible futures. They're helping you see that the event horizon you think you're trapped behind is actually relative, perspective-dependent, not a fixed feature of reality, but a relationship between where you are and where you're looking. Let me tell you about the event horizon itself, because this is crucial. People think of it as a place, a boundary in space, the edge of the black hole, but it's not. It's a boundary in space-time. It's the collection of points where, if you're moving slower than light, which you are, which everything is, all your forward paths through time lead inward. There's no wall there, no membrane, no surface you can touch. If you fell through it, you wouldn't feel anything. No tingle, no resistance. You'd just keep falling, looking around, wondering when the dramatic thing is supposed to happen. The event horizon exists only relative to someone outside it, only as a description of which points can send light signals to which other points. This is hard to wrap your head around, I know, but stay with me. The event horizon is about communication, about connection, about what can send signals to what. And doesn't that sound like your life? These boundaries you perceive, these points of no return, they're not physical walls. They're about who can reach you, Who can hear you? What parts of your past can send signals to your present? What parts of your future you can influence? When you feel like you've crossed some line and can't go back, that's your event horizon. But it only exists relative to where you're standing. From inside the experience, you just kept moving. From outside, looking back, it looks like the moment everything changed irrevocably. Both are true. You did cross a boundary. And it wasn't a wall. These aren't contradictory. They're two valid descriptions of the same event from different frames of reference. I watch people beat themselves up over this all the time. They think they should have known, should have seen the event horizon coming, should have stopped before crossing it. But you can't see your own event horizon from the inside. That's the whole point. It's only visible from a distance, in retrospect, from a different frame. The moment you're in right now, you can't know if it's past your event horizon or not. You can't know if future, you will look back and see this as the point of no return. So what do? You do what anyone falling through spacetime does. You keep going. You make the best choices you can with the information you have. You trust that whether or not this is an event horizon, you're still you on the other side. And here's something else. Event horizons aren't the same for everyone. A black hole has an event horizon at a specific distance from its center for a stationary observer. But if you're moving fast enough, if you're in orbit, your effective horizon is different. Your relationship to the boundary changes based on your motion, your energy, your trajectory. Same thing in life. What's a point of no return for one person is just a difficult transition for another. What looks like irreversible catastrophe from one frame of reference is survivable change from another. You're not wrong about how things feel to you, but neither is someone else wrong for seeing your same situation differently. You're in different frames. You have different horizons. This is why comparison is so painful. You're trying to match your horizon to someone else's when they're in fundamentally different positions. They haven't crossed the boundaries you've crossed. They can't see the boundaries you can see, and you can't see theirs. Now I need to talk about something that's going to sound dark, but actually isn't. Singularities. The center of a black hole where, according to our equations, density becomes infinite and space-time curvature becomes infinite, and everything breaks down. Physicists hate singularities. They're a sign that our math is hitting its limits. When you get infinity as an answer, what that really means is, I don't know. The theory has stopped working. You've pushed it beyond its domain of validity. But here's what I want you to understand. A singularity isn't a thing. It's not a point in space where reality actually becomes infinite. It's where our description fails, where our map stops corresponding to the territory, where our language for describing the universe runs out of words. And that's okay. That's not nature failing. That's our models being honest about their limits. Now think about the worst moment of your life, the thing you can't quite think about directly, the memory that, when you get close to it, just becomes this overwhelming static, this incomprehensible density of pain and confusion. That's your singularity. That's where your narrative breaks down, where the normal ways you make sense of your experience stop working. And you've probably been treating that like it's a flaw in you, like you should be able to think clearly about it, like you should be able to put it into words, into a coherent story. But what if that's asking the impossible? What if that moment is genuinely at the limit of what your meaning-making apparatus can process? What if the fact that it doesn't make sense isn't because you're not trying hard enough, but because sense-making itself breaks down there? Physicists don't beat themselves up for not being able to describe the inside of a singularity. They accept the limit. They say, okay, our current theories get us this far, and past this point we need new physics. We need a better language. We need quantum gravity or something we haven't discovered yet. Why don't you give yourself the same grace? Why are you demanding that your narrative powers work in the regime where they fundamentally can't? The thing that happened to you, the trauma, the loss, the moment that broke you, It might just be past the event horizon of your ability to make a coherent story. And that's not failure. That's hitting the actual limits of what stories can do. You don't need to understand the singularity. You don't need to be able to describe it. You just need to know it's there, that you survived coming close to it, and that it's not you. The thing that happened to you is not the same as the story you can't yet tell about it. Maybe you'll never have the full story. Maybe the information is too scrambled, too compressed, too quantum. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you can live a full life with a singularity in your past that you simply accept rather than explain. Let me shift again because I want to talk about something that gives me hope. Hawking radiation. The fact that black holes aren't actually black. They're not perfectly dark. They emit radiation. They glow, very faintly, with thermal radiation. Hawking figured this out by looking at what happens at the quantum level right at the event horizon. Virtual particle pairs pop into existence all the time in empty space. One particle and one antiparticle, and normally they immediately annihilate each other. But right at the horizon, sometimes one partner falls in and the other escapes. The one that escapes becomes real radiation, and it carries energy away from the black hole. This means black holes evaporate. Given enough time, they shrink and eventually disappear. Even the supermassive ones, even the dense, terrible ones. Everything has a half-life. This was shocking when Hawking first showed it. Black holes were supposed to be eternal. Once formed, there forever. But no, the universe doesn't let anything stay unchanged. Even the densest concentrations of gravity eventually give themselves back to the void. And the radiation that escapes, it's thermal. It's random. It doesn't carry obvious information about what fell in. This is what caused the information paradox I mentioned earlier. If the radiation is random, where did the information go? But as physicists dug deeper, they realized the radiation isn't quite random. There are correlations, subtle patterns. The information is there, scrambled beyond recognition, but conserved. Encoded in relationships between particles that are so complex we can barely describe them mathematically, let alone observe them. Your pain works like this too. It has a half-life. The thing that destroyed you 5 years ago, is it exactly as heavy now? Or has it evaporated a little, the sharp edges worn down, the crushing density reduced? You might say no, it's exactly the same. But I don't think that's true. I think you've gotten used to the changed weight. I think it's evaporated slowly enough that you didn't notice the transition. But compare how you are now to how you were right after. Something has changed. Something has been radiated away. And here's the hard part. For massive black holes, this process takes longer than the age of the universe. Way longer. Some pain outlives you. Some black holes in your psyche will still be there when you die. And that's okay. That's not failure. That's just the math. You don't have to be fully healed to have lived well. You don't have to have processed all your trauma to be worthy of peace. Some stuff evaporates slowly. Some stuff might not evaporate at all in your lifetime. And that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're honest. The universe itself hasn't figured out how to speed up Hawking radiation. Why do you think you should have figured out how to speed up your healing? Now here's something subtle but important. The radiation coming off a black hole, it's entangled. Quantum mechanically connected to the stuff that fell in. Even though you can't read the information directly, it's there in the relationships, in the correlations between particles that seem unrelated. Your healed self is entangled with your traumatized self. The you moving forward is quantum mechanically connected to the you that got hurt. You're not separate people. You're the same system in different states, and information flows between those states in ways you don't consciously perceive. This is why healing isn't linear. Why you can be fine and then suddenly not fine. Why old triggers still fire. You're not backsliding. You're experiencing the quantum connections between your current state and your past state. The entanglement means they're not actually separate. They're correlated in ways that don't respect time. And you know what? That's beautiful. It means you don't have to cut off your past self to move forward. You don't have to amputate the hurt parts. You're entangled with them. You carry them in the pattern of your radiation, in the subtle correlations of who you're becoming. They're not gone. They're transformed. They're you. Let me talk about the holographic principle because this is one of the most beautiful, strange ideas to come out of studying black holes. The idea is that all the information inside a black hole is encoded on its surface, on the two-dimensional event horizon. Everything in the three-dimensional interior is somehow completely described by patterns on the boundary. Think about that. Take everything in a volume, all the complexity, all the depth, and somehow it's all written on the surface. The interior isn't separate from the boundary. It's an expression of it, a projection from it. This sounds impossible until you realize you do this all the time with holograms. A flat piece of film encodes a three-dimensional image. Shine light through it and the full depth appears. The 3D structure isn't in the film exactly. It's encoded in the interference patterns on the flat surface. Black holes might work the same way. The universe might work the same way. The three dimensions of space we move through might be holographic projections of information encoded on some distant boundary. But forget the cosmology for a second. Think about you. All the depth of your interior experience, your thoughts, your feelings, your memories, your identity, it shows up on your surface, in your behavior, your facial expressions, your tone of voice, your boundaries, the way you move through the world. You might feel like the real you is hidden deep inside where no one can see. But the holographic principle says no. Everything inside is encoded on the surface. People who really pay attention can read you, not because they're invasive, because the information is there, written in the pattern of how you interface with the world. This is why you can't hide trauma, why it shows up in your body language even when you think you're fine, why people who love you know something's wrong even when you say you're okay. The interior state is projected onto the boundary. The depth is visible in the surface if you know how to read it. And here's the flip side. If the interior is encoded on the surface, then changing the surface changes the interior. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is understanding that there's no fundamental separation between inside and outside. They're two descriptions of the same thing. When you change your behavior, your patterns, your boundaries, you're not just changing the surface. You're changing what's encoded. You're rewriting the hologram. And the interior depth shifts accordingly. This is why practices work. Why showing up differently in the world actually changes how you feel inside. You're not pretending. You're recognizing that your surface and your depth are entangled, holographically connected. Change one, and you necessarily change the other. I want to come back to time because I don't think I've fully conveyed how weird this gets. Inside the event horizon of a black hole, the direction we call forward in time points spatially inward, toward the singularity. The future isn't ahead of you anymore, it's down, or in or whatever direction the center is. This means once you've crossed the horizon, reaching the singularity isn't a choice. It's not about where you go, it's about when. It's as inevitable as tomorrow. You can move around inside the event horizon, left, right orbit if you want, but you can't avoid moving forward in time, and forward in time means closer to the center. The singularity is in your future the same way. Next Tuesday is in your future. Not as a place you might or might not visit, as a time you're definitely heading toward. Now that sounds terrifying until you realize you've always lived this way. Tomorrow is coming whether you want it or not. You can't avoid your future. You can't stay in today forever. Time moves forward and it takes you with it. The only question is what you do with the space you have, the sideways motion, the choices within the inevitable progression. Inside the event horizon, this just becomes more obvious. The pretense that you control your ultimate trajectory drops away. You're going to hit the singularity. The question is who you'll be when you do, what you'll see on the way, whether you'll fight the inevitable or accept it. And isn't that life after trauma, after loss, after the diagnosis, the betrayal, the collapse? You've crossed a horizon. The thing is going to happen. You're going to carry this. You're going to be changed. You're going to reach some kind of reckoning. That's inevitable now. It's in your future the way the singularity is in the future of anything that's crossed the event horizon. But you still have choices. Sideways motion, the quality of your fall. Whether you stay curious or shut down, whether you notice the beauty in the free fall or just clench your eyes shut and wait for impact. The event horizon strips away the illusion of control over the big thing, but it doesn't strip away meaning. It doesn't strip away agency within the fall. You're going toward the singularity, but how you go, that's still yours. Let me tell you something personal. I spent my whole career drawing diagrams, little pictures of particle interactions, squiggly lines representing photons, arrows showing electrons moving through time. These diagrams became my way of understanding reality. I could calculate anything if I could draw it, but I never drew a black hole. Not really. I'd sketch the spacetime curvature, the light cones tipping over, the event horizon. But I never had a diagram that felt like it captured what was actually happening. My usual way of seeing, my technique, my method, it stopped working. And that scared me more than I wanted to admit. Because what else was I wrong about? If my pictures broke down at black holes, where else were they failing? What other blind spots did I have? It took me a long time to get comfortable with that, to accept that my way of understanding had limits, that some things can't be reduced to a clever diagram, that the universe is under no obligation to fit my preferred mode of comprehension. Black holes taught me intellectual humility. They taught me that "I don't understand this yet" is a complete sentence, that not knowing isn't the same as unknowable, and that sometimes the thing you understand least is trying to teach you how understanding itself works. I think you need to hear that, too. The thing in your life you can't figure out, the relationship that doesn't make sense, the grief that won't resolve, the pattern you keep repeating. Maybe it's not a failure of your intelligence. Maybe it's showing you the limits of your current operating system. Maybe it's asking you to develop new ways of knowing. You can't solve a black hole with Newtonian physics. You need relativity. You need to upgrade your framework. Same with your life. Some problems don't yield to your current level of thinking. They require you to grow into new ways of seeing. And that's hard. It's so much easier to think the problem is solvable and you're just not smart enough, because then the framework is fine and you just need to try harder. But what if the framework is the limit? What if you need to let it break so something better can emerge? Black holes break every framework eventually. Classical physics says they can't exist. Special relativity says they're frozen stars. General relativity says they're real but eternal. Quantum mechanics says they evaporate. Quantum field theory says information is preserved in ways we barely understand. Each framework gets you closer, but none of them complete the picture. Your life works the same way. Each therapist, each book, each philosophy gets you closer, but none of them will complete the picture. Because you're not a problem to be solved. You're a phenomenon to be experienced, to be lived, to be witnessed in its full, irreducible complexity. And just like physicists keep finding new frameworks for black holes, you keep finding new frameworks for yourself, not because the old ones were wrong, because you outgrew them, because you need bigger, stranger, more flexible ways of thinking to hold all of what you're becoming. Okay, I want to talk about what you actually do with all of this, because I've told you a lot about how black holes work, how they're paradoxical, how they mirror your life. But what do you do tomorrow? What changes? First, practice holding paradox. Start small. Notice when you have two contradictory feelings, and instead of trying to resolve them, just hold them both. I love this person, and I'm angry at them. I'm proud of how far I've come, and I'm disappointed I'm not further. Don't pick one. Don't decide which is more true. Just hold them. This feels uncomfortable at first because you're trained to think contradiction means error. Something must be wrong if both things are true. But black holes teach us that's not how reality works. Time can pass differently for two observers and both be right. You can be stuck and moving simultaneously. The math works out. The universe contains the paradox just fine. Your discomfort with paradox is a habit, not a law of nature. You can unlearn it, and when you do, so much suffering falls away. Because you're not constantly trying to collapse your experience into one consistent story. You can be multiple things. You can be complex. Here's a concrete practice. Take a moment from your past you're stuck on. Write down the story from inside it. Use present tense. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. Everything is falling apart. Write how it felt to be in it. Then write the same moment from outside. From your current perspective. I see myself hesitating. I see the way my shoulders tensed. I see myself making the choice, good or bad, and moving forward. Write what someone watching would have observed. Both stories are true, the one falling through the event horizon and the one watching from outside. Neither is more real. You get to honor both, the interior experience and the exterior view, the panic and the eventual progression. You're allowed to hold both. Second practice, information inventory. This is based on the holographic principle. What's encoded on your surface right now? What are your behaviors, your boundaries, your reactions telling the story of? Pick a reaction that feels automatic or oversized, something where you respond more strongly than the situation seems to warrant. Ask yourself, what past experience might this be the compressed memory of? What information is encoded here? You don't have to go into the black hole, relive the trauma, dredge up the pain. You just read the surface. You just notice, oh, this intensity carries information about something that happened before. This isn't about now. This is Hawking radiation from an old collapse. And once you see that, once you recognize the pattern as encoding, as information from the past in transformed form, you get some distance. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're accurately responding to information that's present, but in a different form than you expected. Third practice. Half-life awareness. Once a week or once a month, whatever rhythm works, pause and ask, what am I carrying that's lighter than it was? What pain has a tiny bit less mass? What black hole has evaporated even slightly? This isn't toxic positivity. This isn't pretending things are fine. This is honest accounting of Hawking radiation. The math says even the densest black holes evaporate. The question is, can you notice it happening? Can you catch the subtle decrease in weight? Sometimes the answer will be nothing. Sometimes the weight feels exactly the same. That's okay. That's honest. But sometimes you'll notice, oh, that thing that flattened me last year doesn't quite flatten me now. It's still heavy, it's still there, but it's 1% lighter, maybe 2%. That's not nothing. That's the universe doing its work. That's quantum particles escaping the event horizon one by one. That's healing at exactly the rate reality allows. Not fast enough for your liking, but real. Fourth practice. Living at the horizon. You learned that event horizons are perspective dependent. What looks like a point of no return from one angle is just another moment from another. So practice shifting frames. When you feel like you've crossed some line, ruined something, gone too far, pause. Take a breath. Ask, what would this look like from inside? From the perspective of someone living through it rather than judging it. From inside, you just made a choice with the information you had. From inside, you're just continuing through time, 1 second after another. The drama of the event horizon only appears from outside, from the perspective that can see before and after. You get to choose which frame to inhabit. You can be the outside observer of your own life, seeing event horizons and failures and points of no return, or you can be the one falling, the one living, the one for whom each moment is just the next moment. Both are available to you. Both are true. But one is a lot more compassionate. One lets you keep going without the constant judgment of whether this moment is the moment everything changed. And fifth, accept singularities. Accept that there are places in your past where your narrative breaks down, where the story stops making sense, where you get infinity as an answer, and that just means, I don't know. Stop trying to make those moments make sense. Stop demanding that you be able to explain them, integrate them, resolve them. Some events are genuine singularities. They're at the limit of what your meaning-making can process. That doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you've encountered something genuinely extreme, genuinely beyond the normal operating parameters of a human psyche. The fact that it broke your sense-making apparatus is information about its intensity, not about your inadequacy. Physicists don't solve singularities. They note them. They say, here be dragons, our maps end here, we need new physics to go further. You can do the same. You can mark the territory and say, I survived coming close to this, and I don't need to understand it to move forward. Now I want to pull all of this together because I think there's a coherent picture emerging. Black holes are where all your comfortable assumptions break down. Time stops being universal. Space and time swap roles. Information behaves in ways that violate your intuitions. Paradoxes are real and unresolvable. And instead of seeing that as black holes being weird exceptions, what if that's what they really are? What if black holes are just reality being honest? Reality saying, your everyday assumptions only work in everyday conditions. Push to the extremes and they fall apart. Not because reality breaks, but because your models do. You live in the everyday most of the time, where time feels universal, where cause and effect are clear, where things make sense. And that's fine. That's useful. Newtonian physics works great for most things, even though it's technically wrong. But when you hit extremes, when you lose someone, when you break, when you cross your own event horizon, the everyday rules stop working. And you think that means something's wrong with you. But what if it just means you're in a regime where different rules apply? What if trauma physics is real physics? What if the paradoxes you're experiencing aren't signs of malfunction, but signs that you're in extreme conditions where the simple rules don't hold? Then you stop fighting the paradox. You stop trying to make your experience conform to how things are supposed to work. You accept, I'm near a black hole. Of course, time feels weird. Of course, my narrative breaks down. Of course, I'm experiencing contradictions. That's what happens here. And that acceptance, that's not resignation. That's accurate modeling. That's using the right framework for the conditions you're in. That's physics. You know what I love about physics? It doesn't judge. It doesn't say this situation should be different. It just describes what is. An electron doesn't care if you think it should behave like a particle instead of a wave. It does what it does, and physics notes it down. You could treat yourself that way. You could observe your experience without the constant should. You should be over this by now. You should handle this better. You should make sense. Says who? Based on what model? You're in conditions those models weren't designed for. You're experiencing extremes. The physics is different here. How you are makes sense for where you are. Not in some abstract ideal circumstance, but here, now, in the actual gravity well you're in. Let me tell you what I think black holes are really teaching us. They're teaching us that the universe contains genuine mystery. Not mystery as in we haven't figured it out yet. Mystery as in there might be limits to what can be known, compressed into finite descriptions, made sense of. The singularity at the center of a black hole might be genuinely beyond our ability to describe. Not because we're not smart enough, Because description itself breaks down there. Because the tools we have, mathematics, language, conceptual thought, they have domains of applicability, and past certain extremes they just stop working. And that's okay. That doesn't make the universe less real. It makes our relationship to knowing more humble. It makes us accept that we're finite creatures trying to describe something infinite. And we can get remarkably far. We can predict and understand and build models that work beautifully. But we can't get everywhere. There are boundaries. You have singularities, too. Moments or experiences or traumas that exceed your ability to describe, to integrate, to make sense of. And you've been treating that like a personal failing. Like if you just thought about it harder, went to therapy longer, journaled more consistently, you'd finally understand. But what if some things are genuine singularities for you? What if they're at the edge of what your finite psyche can process? Not because you're weak, because the event was genuinely that intense, that beyond normal parameters. Then the goal isn't understanding. The goal is acceptance, marking the boundary, saying, this happened, and it's beyond my sense-making abilities, and I get to live fully anyway. I don't need to solve every equation to have a good life. Physicists do this all the time. They say, we don't know what happens inside the event horizon, but look at all this beautiful physics we can do outside it. Look at all we can predict and understand and work with. The mystery doesn't invalidate the knowledge. It contextualizes it. Your life is like that. You don't know what was really happening in your worst moments. You can't make sense of them. Fine. Look at all the life you're living outside that singularity. Look at all you can understand and work with and enjoy. The mystery doesn't invalidate your healing. It's just there, noted, accepted. I'm going to tell you something vulnerable now. I used to think understanding was everything. I built my whole identity around being the guy who could figure things out, who could see through complexity to simple underlying principles. And I was good at it. Really good. But black holes humbled me. They showed me the limits. They showed me places where my technique, my approach, my whole way of seeing, it just stopped working. And I had to sit with that, had to accept that there were questions I couldn't answer, paradoxes I couldn't resolve. And you know what I found on the other side of that acceptance? Freedom. Because I wasn't locked into my identity as the person who understands everything. I could be curious about things without needing to solve them. I could appreciate mysteries without needing to eliminate them. I could say, I don't know, and have that be a complete, satisfactory answer. You need that, too. You need permission to not have it all figured out, to not understand why you are the way you are, to not have resolved all your contradictions, to live well in the midst of mystery. Because here's the thing, you're never going to have it all figured out. You're never going to resolve all the paradoxes. You're never going to fully understand yourself. You're too complex. You're too much in flux. You're living too close to your own singularities. But you can stop waiting for complete understanding before you give yourself permission to be okay. You can start now, with the paradoxes, with the mysteries, with the genuine not knowing. Okay, we're getting close to the end here, and I want to bring this home. I want to tell you what I really think this is all about. You came here to understand black holes, and I've told you a lot about event horizons and singularities and information paradoxes, but what you've really learned, or what I hope you've learned, is how to hold impossible things, how to be both the person falling and the person watching yourself fall, how to carry loss without letting it define you, how to live with genuine mystery at your center without needing to solve it, how to trust that information, your experiences, your pain, can never truly be destroyed, only transformed. Black holes are the universe's way of teaching us about limits, the limits of our models, the limits of our intuitions, the limits of what can be known or described or made sense of, and instead of those limits being tragic, they're liberating. Because once you accept you can't know everything, can't control everything, can't make everything make sense, you can stop trying. You can put down that exhausting burden. You can be finite and limited and full of mystery and still fully alive. The physicists who understand black holes best aren't the ones who've eliminated all paradox. They're the ones who've gotten comfortable living in it, who can say, here are two contradictory descriptions and both are correct without their brain breaking, who can note a singularity and move on without needing to solve it. That's the skill. That's what I want for you. Not mastery over your confusion, comfort in it, not resolution of your paradoxes, peace with holding them. You're not broken because you're contradictory. You're complex. You're not failing because you don't fully understand your past. You're honest. You're not stuck because some pain won't evaporate. You're real. And here's the mantra I want you to take with you. The thing I want you to remember when you're in the thick of it, when the paradoxes feel overwhelming, when you think you should have it more together. You're not lost inside the black hole of your past. You're encoded on its surface, transformed, compressed into everything you are now. And just like Hawking radiation, you're slowly, patiently, quantum by quantum, returning yourself to the universe in a new form. That's not tragedy. That's physics. That's healing. You don't have to understand the singularity. You don't have to resolve the paradox. You don't have to make it all make sense. You just have to keep going, keep falling through time, keep noticing what's around you, keep being curious about what's possible in the space between where you are and where you're going. The event horizon you're afraid of. You might have already crossed it. You might be on the other side right now, still yourself, still whole, wondering when the scary part starts. That's how horizons work. They're only visible from a distance. Or you might be approaching one, might be getting close to some boundary you're afraid to cross. And I'm here to tell you, there's no wall there. You won't break. You'll just be in a new region of space-time with different rules, and you'll figure out those rules the same way you've figured out everything else, by living them. The universe doesn't let anything truly disappear. It transforms things. It encodes them in new forms. It spreads information out across surfaces and radiates it back slowly over time. But it doesn't delete. It doesn't erase. It doesn't reduce anything to nothing. Neither does your life. The person you were isn't gone. They're encoded in who you are. The pain you've carried isn't wasted. It's transformed you in ways you can read if you look. The time you think you lost wasn't lost. It was the slow evaporation process, the patient quantum work of healing. You're allowed to be both healed and still healing, both free and still carrying weight, both past the event horizon and still yourself. These aren't contradictions. They're correct descriptions from different frames of reference, and you're allowed to not know. To have singularities in your past you can't describe. To have mysteries at your center you can't solve. To have questions that don't have answers. That doesn't make you less. It makes you real. It makes you honest. It makes you someone willing to live at the limits instead of pretending everything fits in neat boxes. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Stop waiting for complete understanding before you give yourself permission to be okay. Stop trying to collapse the paradox. Stop demanding that your story make sense before you're allowed to move forward. Start now, with the contradictions, with the mystery, with the genuine not knowing. Start living like someone who's discovered that the universe itself contains unresolvable paradoxes and decided that's beautiful instead of broken. Start treating yourself like a black hole. Complex, paradoxical, containing information in forms too scrambled to read directly. Slowly evaporating the dense pain into transformed radiation, existing differently for the you inside and the you watching from outside. Both real, both valid. And start trusting. Trusting that information is conserved even when you can't see how. Trusting that evaporation is happening even when you can't measure it. Trusting that the paradox you're living in is real physics, not personal failure. If this landed for you, if something shifted in how you see black holes or time or loss or yourself, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment and tell me, which paradox are you learning to live inside? Which singularity are you learning to accept instead of solve? Which event horizon did you realize you've already crossed? And if you want more of this, more physics that doubles as permission to be human, more science that shows you how reality works at its most extreme and what that teaches us about being alive, subscribe. I'm not done. I've got more strange truths where this came from, more places where the math breaks and that breaking teaches us something essential. Thank you for being curious with me. Thank you for staying through the paradoxes. Thank you for being willing to look directly at black holes and see yourself reflected back. You're not broken. You've just been trying to use Newtonian physics in a relativistic situation. You've been expecting everyday rules to apply to extreme conditions. And now you know. You need different frameworks for different regimes, and you're in a regime where paradox is normal, where time bends, where information transforms but doesn't disappear. That's not a problem. That's just where you are, and the physics works just fine here. You work just fine here. See you in the next one.